see anybody other than Franchi. It would be really fantastic if all of you can turn your cameras on, because anyway, it's such a new discipline. And then I have no clue if all of you are following what I'm saying or not. And it does not make much sense talking to an empty crowd. Because what, after all, is a class without the students? Hello, Ripu. Hello, Pratishika.
Yes, good morning.
Okay, so today we'll start off with Unit 2. And Unit 2 in your syllabus suggests that we will talk about the theories and debates in digital humanities. That is interesting because the kind of lectures which we already did earlier, such as defining digital humanities and history, nature, concept, importance, need of digital humanities, all of this, as you understand, already includes and talks about the theories and debates in digital humanities. But since in Unit 2 we also have another specific topic called theories and debates in digital humanities, one has to assume that we are expected to talk in a much advanced and in a more nuanced level about the theories and debates of DH. Now, since you've already, it's an added advantage that you've already started doing your classes with your Parthojit sir, because you have to understand by this time, and I'm sure you have understood by this time, that digital humanities is not about just studying theory and leaving it at that. You also have to learn it at a hands-on level. You also have to learn data mining. I do not know what softwares Parthojit sir would be using. Parthojit sir, would you also be teaching them this software called R? I don't know. I have to figure that out also. I don't know if Patrajit sir can hear me. Anyway, you have to learn a whole lot of things on a hands-on basis so as to be able to implement them in your studying of humanities. Now, the common problems that keep arising out of these issues, out of digital humanities, is people generally tend to believe that digital humanities is some kind of an amalgamation between the digital and the humanities. And I keep saying this to all my students across every class that I come, that digital humanities is not a marriage between digital and humanities. That digital humanities is not a space where we have some understanding of the digital and some understanding of the humanities. That is not what we are doing. Digital humanities, specifically understanding it, is, of course, it's an academic discipline, but it's not a topical discipline in the sense that we have topics one after the other, such as what one would have in chemistry, such as what one would have in say political science, in which you would study one topic and then you would appear for certain question and answers in your examination, and then you would understand and assume that chapter has been done and you move on to the next chapter. So basically, such kinds of disciplines which move from one chapter to another, and after you finish your first chapter, second chapter, one day you eventually move to your 10th chapter. These are all topical in nature. You understand the meaning of the word topical? A topical discipline is a discipline in which you move from topics to topics. In digital humanities, the flow of the discipline is not topical, it's a skill based discipline in which you really have to hands on learn certain techniques which your professor has already started teaching you, based on which you will learn to create your own digital tools, such kinds of tools which will help you in studying the humanities. So, what are the typical kinds of? So, for that, you need to remember and you need to understand what are the problems that you typically face in your analysis or in your study of the humanities. So, can anybody talk to me about what are the typical problems one tries to one generally faces and tries to take heads on in order to solve as a problem in humanities learning? Any idea? Anybody from the class? What are the different kinds of problems that you still face in the humanities which would become evidently better if you were to use your own digital tools? One of the most important kinds of research which for generations humanities students have done is thematic analysis. All of you understand the thematic analysis. You probably read the works of a novelist, you probably read the works of a poet, or you read the works of a specific author of a certain time. Say you read the romantic period of British literature, whatever that's supposed to mean. Now, how would you typically understand whether this particular writing, supposing I give you a piece of poem, And then this piece of poem is a romantic poem, but then I do not specify the name of the author. How will you search whether this is a romantic poem, and how will you figure out whether this is a romantic poem without knowing the author? Because if you know the name of the author, you'll immediately Google and find out that period, and then therefore you will figure out that yes, probably this poem belongs to the romantic period. Supposing you don't know the name of the author, how will you figure out whether it's a romantic poem, whether it's a modernist poem, whether it's a postmodern poem, post-humanistic poem, or whatever different kinds of literary movements that there are? How would you typically understand, without knowing the name of the author, if a certain literary piece, say, it belongs to the romantic period or any other period? How will you find out? Please keep talking to me. Please interact with me in class, because otherwise it makes no sense. It's not a seminar. It's a class. In this, you're supposed to be talking to me. One of the easiest ways of doing it is by doing a thematic analysis. Probably you already have an understanding of what kinds of literary themes or literary devices would be used in a romantic poem, or in a 19th century novel, realist novel. You have some idea of the literary period and therefore the literary tendencies, and you'll therefore try and figure out whether it also holds true to the kind of literary piece that you are now studying, analyzing. That's how you'll typically do it. Now, how do you understand what are the typical literary themes? That training you already have in your humanities. How will you search for such themes within the poem? If it's a poem, it's probably easier, because a poem would be what? How many lines? 20 lines, 14 lines, 30 lines, 100 lines. In a poem, it's easier to figure out whether the themes which you already understand and know because of your literary training, humanities training, how will you figure them out, say, whether it exists in a novel? Because a novel is not about 20 lines, 30 lines, 100 lines. A novel is way bigger. How will you still figure out a novel without knowing the name of the author, whether it is a realist novel, whether it is a romantic novel, or whether it is really not a novel but a precursor to the novel, whether it is a picaresque novel? How will you understand that?
Them from some words and sentence.
Yeah, so probably you'll do a thematic analysis. And typically speaking, a thematic analysis, for so long, we would do a thematic. How would we typically do a thematic analysis? Normally, how does a literary student go about doing a thematic analysis? ক্লাসে কথা বলবেন, একটা ক্লাস নিচ্ছি ক্লাসে। How would you typically, yeah. Yeah. So it's very possible, when you have a whole lot of time in hand and when the only work you're doing in that literary activity is figuring out whether it's a romantic novel or not. But sometimes that's not the only thing that we are trying to do. Probably of the 10 things or 20 things we're trying to do in our research, only one thing is to figure out of a certain text whether that belongs to the romantic period or not. One of the effective ways, therefore, is to put it in a program and do something hands-on that Parthojit sir will here on teach you, something called data mining. You'll have to take out specific data components from a large chunk of text. And what will be the kind of data that you will look for? That is a part of your humanities training. That you will already look for the words, or look for certain sentences, look for certain moods or sentiments, all of which are finally embedded in words, because after all, as literary students, we are mostly dealing with the written word or the oral word. So when we are finally trying to analyze a theme with the basis of words, it's easy for us to create our own programs, or create or put it in some existing program which suits our purpose, and try and see whether it brings us some kinds of results or not. And when it actually brings us some kinds of results, it's one learning. When it does not bring us some kind of result, it's another learning. So, for instance, it's easy to understand that we are searching for words such as love, such as nature, if we're looking for romantic poems. So we can say, yes, this novel has romantic tendencies. Now, what will we say if the novel does not yield results with the kind of words which in our humanities learning we thought were romantic? If the novel does not fetch those words, then we will understand probably it's not from that period. Now, how much time would a humanities scholar typically require in doing this bit manually? Reading a 100-page novel and therefore figuring out whether it's romantic or not. And that's not the research. After you get the result, then your research begins. So, how much preconditioning time do you need for this kind of an understanding? Depending on the variability of speed of reading, even if it is a 100-page novel, you probably would need around 2 days, 3 days to get an answer. But a computer program would typically take and give you the answer in some 2 minutes. Parthajit sir, are you there? Can Parthajit sir hear me? Parthajit sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yeah.
if you put it in a program, Parthajit sir will also collaborate with me in this class and give you a fair bit of understanding of what I'm trying to say. So I'm saying,
Yeah, ma'am.
Parthajit sir, if we create our own program and if we put in
Yes.
certain feeding words, how much time
Yes.
will this program typically need to figure out whether our entire novel has certain kinds of tendencies with the help of keywords that we have placed? How much time will the program take in giving us the results?
It depends on the ma'am input
Mhm.
data size.
Say a 100-page novel.
A 100-page novel, if we use a pre-trained model, pre-trained already that model is trained, then it will probably need 2 to 3 minutes.
That's exactly what I was telling the class.
Uh,
So for
yeah.
something, when you do it manually, it'll probably take you 2 to 3 days. And if we have learned the art of creating our own digital tool, our own program of data mining, in which we only need to figure the data out for our own necessity and purpose, this entire work would be done in 2 to 3 minutes. Now, supposing this entire class has taken up the responsibility of creating an entire digital corpus of some famous Assamese author, works of his or her entire lifetime. Once again, randomly give me the name of any really famous Assamese author who has written a whole lot of work. Just give me an example.
Lakshminath Bezburwa.
Yeah, even last time when I was talking to the class told me about Lakshminath Bezburua. So supposing at the end of this, as part of your unit 4, you decide, and if you actually decide of doing this, I mean, it's going to be a wonderful work in literature. It's going to be beyond words and explanation. Let's say the whole class, not individually, but collectively, because it's so big that it will be difficult to work individually for one person. Let's say the whole class tries and decides to work on a project of digitizing, of archiving, digitizing, and therefore creating metadata and therefore making it programmable, machine readable of the entire works, all the works of Lakshminath Bezburua. A similar activity has already been done with the works of Rabindranath Tagore, and we will talk about it in the fifth class when our topic would be digital humanities in India. I will talk to you about a project called Vichitra in which such kind of a work has already been done. The entire work of all the corpus of writings of Rabindranath Tagore, including his scribbles, his drawings, everything has been archived, digitized, made machine readable. Therefore, there has been metadata inserted, and a whole lot of computer activity has already been done. After which, today, because you see, in earlier days, to talk about Rabindranath's works, we would look around for experts. And that person is a Rabindranath scholar. So if you have to figure something out about Rabindranath's work, you need to go and talk to that person. So that person who is a human person, a blood person who would have forgotten. In many cases, such experts are so prolific they don't forget. But we're talking of theoretical possibilities. If it depends on one expert who remembers every bit of Rabindranath, then it's risky. The person might fall sick at the time in which I want to talk about, in which I want to carry on my research. The person might not have a good relationship with me, and therefore my work has been stuck for long. There can be so many other humanistic problems in between arriving to our certain specific results. Instead, now it is actually a 2 minute affair. If all of you can decide to, can all of you type digitally in Assamese? Just give me a second. একটু পরে ক্লাস নিচ্ছে 11টার পর Yeah. So can all of you type in Assamese? And what softwares do you use for typing in Assamese? what are the softwares that you typically use? Okay, and it's a pretty good software because I don't know how to write in Assamese, so I have no clue. I will understand what you are saying as true. So supposing all of you take this, everybody in this class knows how to type in Assamese? Everybody? Say for instance,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, say for instance, Dikshita knows how to type in Assamese, or Kiran knows how to type in Assamese. One of the most effective things which you could think of doing as part of your project, and it would lead to beautiful results, is to first type down the entire corpus of work of Lakshminath Bezbarua. Then make a repository of it. Then you ask Arthojit sir to teach you, and he's anyway already teaching you, how to create metadata of entire texts. If it's a poem, you create a metadata of the poem. If it's a novel, you create a metadata of the novel. If it's something else, you create a metadata of that. Then you put it in some machine readable markup language in which the computer can now begin to fetch results for all of you. Then there are other things which you can do. Supposing there are two editions of a same work of Lakshminath Bezbarua, highly possible, even though I don't know, I am talking out of thin air. It's I think very much possible that for any particular work there has been two editions or three editions of the works of Lakshminath Bezbarua. Is it or not? You tell me. Okay. Now, what's the difference between a reprint and a new edition? We often say that this book is out of print, therefore we're getting a reprint. And we often say this is the latest edition. What is the difference between a reprint and a new edition? Oh. And when you're saying it may be changed, I want to correct it and say it will be changed. If there are no changes, it will just be a reprint. That the physical number of copies has been sold off, and therefore you print it again from the same master copy which you already had. But in the case of a new edition, probably there has been a change, whatever, minor kind of change or major kind of change. Now, is it humanly possible, supposing there are three editions of any specific work of Lakshminath Bezbarua, is it humanly possible to actually figure out the changes in the three novels by keeping them side by side and reading them side by side and understanding the changes? Yes or no? Is it humanly possible? But for the computer, if you can put all the three versions up, which also means that you have to first initially do that bit of hard work. Some group has to sit and type down the first edition, some group has to sit and type down the second edition, and you will eventually learn from Parthojit sir how to mark it up, how to create all metadata, all hashtags, everything, etc. After that, when all the three editions are put up, it's humanly possible to create some kind of a scanner which will point out the differences in editions for you in roughly about 2, 3, 5 minutes, depending on the size of the input data, as sir also rightly points out. Now, what are the kinds of humanities research that you can take on from there after you get these results? First question obviously would be why the change? The second question would be the nature of the change. And the third more important question would be, now if there is a change, what do we do with the change? Do we analyze, when you typically understand and analyze a certain kind of a text, do you also talk about which edition of the text you are thematically analyzing? In many cases, we do not, because if we are doing it in a human way, in a manual way, it's absolutely difficult to figure out the changes and therefore look at the kinds of changes and the necessity for such changes in all the different editions. But with a computer program suited to our purpose, it's absolutely okay. Now, why do we need to create our own tools? That is the next big question. We need to create our own tools because, for instance, whoever is a computer science engineer will understand and teach and talk about the engineering side of things. That person is competent in teaching you how to write a program, how to create a program. But only you know the specific needs that are required for your understanding of the text, because you are the one who has the learning and the theoretical practice and expertise of approaching a text from the field of humanities. The computer science engineer does not have that expertise. So you cannot say that we will read the text up, we will give the data to the engineer, and the engineer will create the program and we will work on it. Because the engineer will not have any idea of what to do. So for instance, I think I keep giving this example to everybody. Probably I gave this example even in your class. In Bangla, typically any word which ends with the suffix che is generally a verb. If you say dekche, bolche, korche, these are all verbs. So if you ask a computer science engineer to figure out from the dictionary every word which ends with the suffix che and to mark it up in the program as a verb, because later on you only want to work with the verbs, then it will not be possible for that engineer person to specifically understand the nuances of the language. Eventually, what will happen? A word such as biche, which typically means a scorpion, will be termed as a verb, which it is not, it is a noun. So only humanities people have an understanding of how to approach a subject or a language with the kind of humanities training that we already have. Additionally, now we are asking you to create your own digital programming tools in order to yield and get the right kinds of results, which will help us in a proper research and a proper understanding of working with really large chunks of text, which is practically impossible to be done manually unless we start using digital tools. Now, two things have happened. Everybody in the class have turned their cameras off, and I have no clue whether you've understood or not. And secondly, okay, Pranchi has turned the camera on. And secondly, really, if there is a doubt, because I cannot see your faces, I will not be able to approach it. So can you quickly turn your cameras back on? Thank you, thank you. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Why is it important to create your own digital tools in order to work with very large chunks of humanities data? Because for a long time in the history of humanities studies, people have generally overlooked the entire idea that working with large chunks of data is either possible or necessary. People generally have a certain kind of idea that humanities scholars would be looking at specific texts. But that's not all. The point is how shall we approach a research when we are working with very large chunks of data? For that, we have to create our own digital tools. Otherwise, all humanities departments will very soon reach a dead end. Because there's no point in doing a research in, give me an example of a typical research that people pursuing PhD in Assamese tends to do. A typical example of a PhD research. You don't have to take names or give specifics. Just give me a typical idea of what kind of research people do in Assamese. So one of the typical ways of doing research is looking at the works of this author and looking at the works of that author, and between the works of two authors, we'll try and figure out whether they were romantic in nature, or we'll try and figure out how contemporary they were in talking about certain social issues. And the research will go on and on and on and on in this field. Nothing will really happen to carry the wheel of research forward to the next change of a paradigmatic level. All the research that will keep happening, if we are not using digital tools, will keep happening at a syntagmatic level. And you understand the changes between syntagmatic and paradigmatic? Do you understand changes? Do you understand the difference between a syntagmatic change and a paradigmatic change? A syntagmatic change is a horizontal change. So basically, you only make minor changes. A syntagmatic change would be looking at the thematic analysis of author A, and in the next research, you'd still do a thematic analysis, but you look at an author B. And in another research, somebody will again look at the thematic analysis of an author C. I'm not saying it's unimportant. What I'm saying is the nature of research ceases to remain bound within only one or two certain types, because our tendency of research will continuously keep on being of the manual nature. How much we can approach to do manually, we will keep on doing it manually. And since we will keep on doing it manually, we will not be able to talk about major paradigm shifts. We will not be able to talk about really what happens and how such kind of research can impact our learnings, because we are not ready to look beyond how we can already do, because we are only working with the kinds of trainings that we already have in the humanities, which is to read a text carefully. Sometimes teachers in class actually tell you that if you do not bring a text, don't enter my class. These are typical things that keeps happening in every literature class. Have you all never come across these situations? No teacher ever told you, if you don't bring the text to class, don't enter my class. Because we will keep on thinking that this class of literature is about this one text, and by text it's actually a physically bound hard copy, and that we have to read very carefully, because the question will come from this text. But if this text once for all has been typed, marked, and uploaded on the web, then whatever question can ever come up from that text will typically take us 2 minutes to answer. It does not have to be that big a deal anymore, as much as we try and make out of reading a certain text. That's the point that I'm trying to ask and understand from your generation. Your generation should start feeling irritated and agitated if you are asked to do the same kinds of research over and over again. Because we from our generation actually started feeling irritated and agitated. That's why we moved to digital humanities. That's why we wanted to see the major changes of a philosophical nature that can happen within the study of humanities. And when that kind of a change happens, it's called a paradigmatic shift. So it actually changes the entire premise of the research now changes. It's not the same research anymore with changes in names. It's a different research altogether. And for that, we have to create our own tools. A fantastic project that you could think of doing is to first create some kind of a dictionary in Assamese literature, which already you actually have. I mean, I'm sure you have more than 2, 3 important versions of the Assamese dictionary. You all can create a digital dictionary and make it interactive for children to learn Assamese or for non-native speakers to learn Assamese. So for instance, I don't know Assamese, but because I know Bangla, if somebody speaks Assamese to me, or if somebody speaks Assamese in front of me, but speaks very slowly, I can make an aggregate meaning out of it. Even though I can't understand every word in specifics, I probably would be able to understand some bit of what is being said. But you could create some kind of an interactive language learning tool after, because you already have the knowledge of how to learn or how to understand Assamese. You know the language. A computer science engineer can help you to create this tool, but a computer science engineer will not know the specifics of the language. So that bit you all have to sit and do. Now, the only point where we will end is by realizing that this digital humanities project cannot be done if the humanities person is still doing the humanities bit of the work and the engineering person still doing the engineering bit of the work. Digital humanities is not such kind of a multidisciplinary process. It is interdisciplinary, in which every person does both this and that. So when we're talking about theories and debates revolving around digital humanities, first and foremost, it is important to understand that digital humanities is not about calling physical books obsolete. Digital humanities is not to say that the process of digital mediation by category is of a stronger or better position, or that digital books are more evolved. We are not trying to create a hierarchy between the digital and the non-digital, between the digital and the analog. That's really not what we are trying to do. This is not a competition in which we are fighting our war or our battle with anything which is previous to digital. We're neither trying to call physical books obsolete, nor are we trying to say that digital understanding of literature is hierarchically of a superior value. But what we are trying to say is that there are certain kinds of research which can drastically, paradigmatically change if we learn to work with computer programs and if we learn to create our own tools. That's what we're trying to do here. But now I'll also ask for the opinion of Parthajit sir, another sir here who is actually an engineer. So his input would be very important over here. Partha sir, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Can you repeat it again? Yeah.
Yeah. My question is, so no, actually, I don't have a question for you. I was trying to make the class interactive so you can also come in. I'm trying to say that an engineer can teach you how to create a program, but an engineer does not know the specifics of the language. So every digital humanities student will have to learn both. They already need to have the formal training of language and literature, Additionally, they need to learn the program, because otherwise the world will again collapse if one Koel ma'am is trying to talk about the humanities bit and one Parthajit sir is trying to talk about the digital bit. That's not
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we're trying to do. We're
Not
trying
really.
to
Yeah.
create a,
Domain knowledge.
yeah,
To write a program, domain knowledge is always needed. Yeah.
absolutely. Because only
Domain
you will
expertise.
understand what is the kind of problem that exists in your language and literary understanding, or in your language and
Yes, ma'am.
literary research.
Yes, yes.
So any questions till this much? Otherwise, we'll again move ahead. Any questions? No question? Nobody? Okay, what are the different kinds of work that we can do in digital humanities? Any random examples? Anybody wants to talk about it? Anything that you already have in mind? These are the works you can do. Two, of course, I already told you. First is you can start talking about, critical digital editions. Not just digital editions, but critical digital editions. Editions from which you can extract data anytime when you want. You can always create a critical digital edition by making enhanced critical curations of somebody's work which already does not exist digitally. You can convert it digitally and create critical curated editions of such authors' works. And since all of you keep talking to me about Lakshminath Bezbodua, I think you could start off by working on the works of Lakshminath Bezbodua. It's going to be a huge project. Probably you cannot finish it if 20 people are starting to work today within the span of the semester. You cannot finish it, but there's hope, because last time I heard that many of you are not in your final years, you're in your first year only. So maybe together you can start off with the project and the first years can continue in the next year also, by which time there will be another first year who will come into the master's program. So you can keep this as an ongoing project in which first and foremost you all have to uh, first archive every bit of work of Lakshminath Bezborua in Assamese. You have to type it, and then Parthajit sir will teach you how to mark it up, how to create metadata around it, and then you can create some kind of a curated version. After you curate this digital version, you can start working on those little programs which either figure out similarities between two texts, or programs which talk to you about the differences between two texts, programs which talk to you about the differences between editions. So these are basically small scanners. Once you understand how to create these scanners, this won't be difficult. But you need to figure out how to work around creating these scanners. Either they will help you locating the similarities between such and such work, or such and whatever the kinds of research that you typically thereafter want to do. Or you could talk about differences, you could talk about, specifics and additions. You could talk about how many times a certain word appears in the entire work of Lakshminath Bezborua, and why. If you try and create a word cloud and see what are the kinds of words that were mostly used by Lakshminath Bezburi, and not verbs, not just regular a and the kind of articles or going coming kind of words, specific keywords, which you can figure out by understanding some bit about search engine optimization. If you can take specific keywords out and see that Lakshminath Bezbarua has been obsessed with the use of these 5 words, then those kinds of researchers can come after you for the generations to come as to why his entire work revolved around these words. Because do understand that words are not words alone. Words are also themes, words are also characters, words are also tendencies, moods, and sentiments. Then you can start talking about the themes, moods, sentiments in the works of Lakshminath Bezbarua. Or if you think Bezbarua is too big a project to start off with, you can start by archiving and digitizing work of somebody who has lesser number of works. So first you can get a hang of how to work this around. And after you get the hang of it, you can then start working with, more critical editions of more important writers or whatever. Because I don't know Assamese per se, this bit you will have to guide me and tell me what you want to do. But then I can tell you how to go about doing this. And Parthajit sir will teach you exactly what to do in this project. So you can start off by curating critical editions, and after curating these critical editions, you can make enhanced critical editions of digitized works of any famous Assamese author. You can, of course, work on projects such as augmented and fluid textuality. Any clue about augmented and fluid textuality? Maybe you can create some kind of a map around Tezpur University. And in this, some kind of an app which has an embedded map in it. Any person who opens the map and goes around within the premise of the university will start seeing texts in the map that you are right now over here. And then if you click on that link, it probably opens up to a bigger page, the history of why, say it's the administrative building. So I don't know about Tezpur University, but I can tell you about the university from where I studied. It's called Jadavpur University. So for instance, we have this administrative building called Aurobindo Bhavan because it was created by Rishi Aurobindo. So I'm talking about some kind of an augmented fluid textuality in which we create a map and some kind of an app which has a map along with augmented texts. So you go and stand in front of Aurobindo building and the map immediately talks to you and or maybe also puts a text around and also talks to you. It's an audio and visual that, hello, welcome to Jadavpur University. You're standing in front of Aurobindo Bhavan. The Aurobindo Bhavan was established, and somebody clicks on that link, and then it opens up and says the Aurobindo Bhavan was established in the year 1905, following some kind of an act which passed with the National Council of Education, and then Rabindranath Tagore probably delivered his first speech over there, and every kind of details will come. These are also you will get a typical example of these in very sophisticated museum visits, in very sophisticated zoo visits, any kind of curation often has those guided virtual touring apps. You have it in writing and you have it in audio. What are the advantages of having such kind of a map-based app? Any clue? Some kind of fluid intertextual map? What could be the advantages of creating such kind of a map? Anybody? Yeah, anybody. Franchi, yes? Oh, that's okay. Oh, you haven't heard the whole thing? Okay, I'll just repeat the last sentence again. I'm saying you heard till creating critical editions. That's one thing that you can do. You can actually archive and digitize entire works, the whole corpus of works of Lakshminath Besbarua, and then make a critical understanding of it within the knowledge site itself. Pathajit sir will teach you how to do it. Probably you'll have scanners inside. Probably you have other kinds of data mining tools inside from which you can take words out. That is one kind of a work you can do. The other kind of work you can do, I'm giving examples of what are the different kinds of work you can do as part of your digital humanities project. The next kind of work that you can do is you can create some kind of a fluid intertextual map of Tezpur University. Say, for instance, I'm giving examples. It could be anything else. It could be the Kaziranga National Park. If you create this kind of an audio-visual intertextual fluid map of Tezpur University, say somebody accesses the map while the person is traveling inside the university, and the map is on. The person comes and stands in front of the main administrative building, whatever it is called in your university, and immediately a text comes up on the screen that, hello, welcome to the Tezpur University. You are now standing in front of such and such building. This building was created in such and such year following an act passed by the government in such and such year. The history says this, and the entire thing. And it can also come to you as an audio if you want it in your ears. If you are also having headphones, you'll also get to hear it. So you'll create an audio visual interactive map of your university, which is going to be fluid, digital, and interactive in nature. My question is, what are the specific advantages of having this kind of a map? What exactly will happen if you can create this map? Yeah, so for strangers who don't know where to go, it will be helpful. What about so many people who can't see, all the blind people who come to study at Tezpur University? So you'll create a different world, you'll create an inclusive world for different kinds of people. People who can see, who can hear, but are there for the first time. So they don't have a clue where to go and what to do. And then you can keep on adding features to it. Maybe probably the person can put in a question either by typing or through voice and say, how can I reach the Assamese department? and probably they will guide you to the SMS department. These are fantastic things that you could think of doing as student researchers of digital humanities. And anyway, the world will become more inclusive. More than anything else happening, you'll start including a whole more number of people in your life and in your schemes. You could think of doing these projects. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, you could talk about scales such as distance, surface, depth. So, for instance, if you're working on a library, you could create some kind of an app which will search what kind of books are stacked in which part of the library. Probably you'll need a camera sensor there, and then you'll need some counters. So that bit would be very typical computer programming. But after that, once you get the names of the books, maybe you can access them with the library call numbers. So once you go to the library and you have no clue what book to figure where out, because even though we try and say that libraries have been very digitized and very modernized, as long as the entire library has still some components of manual access left in it, the clumsiness of looking for books will remain. And it'll half the time it still depends on the librarian. We still go and talk to the librarians and we say, sir, ma'am, we can't figure this book out. Where is this? Where is this? And then that sir will say, I can't find it out now. Come back after 3 years. After 3 years, you'll go and see sir has gone out on a lunch break. And everything which normally keeps happening in a public university. In a typical public university, we're not saying that every time this happens. But this happens not because the person is not willing to help you. These kinds of things keep happening because we are not updating our system from a system of clumsiness. We know it's impractical, we know it's important to change, but we do not know the correct format from which to initiate such change. It really is difficult for that one librarian sir or librarian madam to cater to how many students would be in your department, say 500 students, teachers, research scholars, everybody included. Then everybody will have specific understanding. So what about creating some kind of a library scale, depth, image sensor, call number sensor app in which you can figure out your own problems. And once you find out which book belongs where, then it's easy for you. And you could also talk about, of course, you can talk about cultural analytics, aggregation, and data mining. And data mining is something you have to learn. It's there in your Unit 3. Pathajit sir is going to cover that bit with you. After you learn data mining, in any text, you don't, unless you want to read the text for the joy of reading, sometimes we read text because we want to extract specific data from the text. Those things will become absolutely easy. Those things will come to you at your fingertips in some 2 to 3 minutes. Earlier, it would take you, for some, it would take 2 to 3 days, and for some people, if you were to do. So, okay, I want to ask this question to you. If somebody was to work on the entire works of Lakshminath Bezbarua and create some kind of a thematic analysis out of it, how much time would that person need? Manually, without using digital tools? Yeah, any clue? Anybody has an? I know you have not started researching, so you probably can't talk to me in specific details. But if you still have any rough clue, 5 years, 4 years, 1 year, 2 minutes, 5 times anything of that, how much time would you take? 5 years. 5 years just for locating all the works, locating and reading up all the works, or concluding the research? Is 5 years from beginning to end, or are you saying 5 years to read up all the works critically? Read all works critically itself would take 5 years. That's because you want to actually manually mine data from it so that you can use it in your research. Okay, so that bit can typically be covered in 5 minutes. So then what you do with your research, for that you have entire 5 years in hand. Imagine the kind of ease of access, imagine the kind of ease of opportunities that will emerge if you start using your own digital tools. Okay, you could also talk about different kinds of visualization and data design. Visualization is also important. Any kind of data design is important, and visualization is a very important kind of data design in which you can create visual graphs, visual maps for your own understanding, for implementing it in your research, for including it in your research, and by seeing a typical visual imagery or a map of anything and immediately getting the first glimpse or the first idea, which will lead you to a bigger research thereafter. Now, again, the mics, the cameras have all turned off, and I have no clue what you're doing. Also, other than Pranchi, nobody else has a working camera in the class other than Biju, Moni, and Pranchi. Where are the cameras of the other people? Yeah, Ripu also turns the cameras on. Ripu, are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Is it making any sense to you?
Ma'am, I want to know about the debate.
Yeah, we
Debate
will
of
do it.
digital humanities.
We will do it. Today we'll understand the theories, tomorrow we'll understand the debates. There will be too many debates, and the debates will be, actually it's important for all of you to understand how to combat each debate, because every time half the world who are still not convinced about practicing digital humanities will keep on telling you about these problems, particularly if you are a digital humanities scholar from India. These are the questions which will keep coming back to you in ways and ways and ways. You can never combat the question ever. Ripu, are you finding the theories talk interesting? Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Okay.
But not properly.
Why not? Then you have to ask me if you have not understood anything. I will obviously repeat it.
In case of visualization, ma'am.
Who's
Hello.
talking? Ah, Parthajit sir is talking. Yes, sir.
In case of visualizations, we can create a graph of all the characters that are involved in a novel.
Yes.
So we can create a family tree, or we can create a relationship tree. So that is a visualization tree for that novel for all the characters.
Correct.
And then it will be easy to create such a tree like visualization graph.
Yeah. Or sometimes,
Just as for just a simple example for the visualizations in for a particular novel.
And now, whenever you give an answer, I wouldn't know if the answer is correct or wrong. So you have to be honest and give a correct answer, because I have no clue. You know, a very fantastic work which all of you can think of doing. There can be many authors who talk about the rural landscape of Assam. And if there are authors who also talk about the rural landscape of Tejpur, you can try and create some kind of a cartographic representation in visualization of actually the landscape that's mentioned in the novel and place it on your Tejpur map. And you can convert it to a tourism. You know, some tourism initiative taken by Department of Assamese Tejpur University. You can say that this is the track. You know, so Belgium has this thing called the Tintin Trail. If you go to Belgium, they'll actually take you through a Tintin trail, saying from the works of R.J., this is from where Tintin started walking, and this is where Tintin used to have his breakfast. Everything is actually taken from texts, from the graphic novels. If you have some kind of texts which are important Assamese works of literature and which are based on Tejpur, you can create some kind of a visualization of the trail that has been mentioned in the novel or the poem or whatever work is there. And then you can convert it to some kind of a literary tourism or an academic tourism. You can give some name and think of doing interesting things with it. Parthajit sir, is that possible? But I don't even know if such kind of a work exists. So I can't give specific examples.
To create a for a particular map for a particular area or what, ma'am?
Yeah, from the text, are there works which talk about Tejpur as a region, any literary work? So we can take those data out and create a trail map, visual trail map, saying that character in that novel traveled through these areas, and we can create a literary tourism kind of an activity.
It is possible, ma'am, but for that computer graphics will also be required. But whatever I have told earlier, that to create a graph, that computer graphics is not required. Computer graphics knowledge is not required for that to create that graph. But to create that kind of situation that you have mentioned now, for that we need some computer graphics knowledge also.
Okay. So I am giving random examples. I understand that nothing's going to happen overnight. It's going to take a whole lot of time. Good thing is that this class has started learning, but it's going to take a whole lot of time. But if we keep the zeal and energy alive, maybe sometime it will happen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you can also think of creating animated archives. You know, animated archives for children. All that I'm saying is I'm giving talking out of random examples. Some of it you
Yeah,
may
it
be able
it
to do now, and some of it you may not be able to do now. So if you create some kind of a children's understanding of the land of Tejpur or children's understanding of the University of Tejpur, you can create some animated thing of histories or whatever. So these are easier
uh,
things. For this you have
yeah,
to
yeah,
have
yeah.
some. Yeah.
Yes,
So
ma'am. It is possible. It is possible. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, of course, you can have at a more advanced level, you can have different kinds of humanities gaming. You can have word games. You can have different kinds of games specific to Assamese literature. You can have quiz games, but these are all smaller things. The word games and the quiz games are smaller. You can have really high impact, real time playing games which can be cracked. It's some kind of a thriller game which can be cracked only if you have properly read the works of such and such author. You can strategize and think of different weird things. Creativity has no end. So I'm just giving examples out of what I think right now, but you can go on and on and on. So that is about it. Last 10 minutes, any questions? For the theories and debates in digital humanities, today we have understood what are the typical ways of looking at digital humanities, different kinds of theories involved. What are the practical possibilities of working in digital humanities? Tomorrow we will talk about specific debates. Debates, the one that exists around the world, and second, specific those kinds of debates which will keep existing in India for another 5-7 years. Economy, demography, class, gender, all questions will keep coming as a hindrance to digital humanities. So those debates will also come. How much of it is actually feasible in a poor country like India? This is one question everybody will eat your heads off. Everybody will ask. You're talking about digital humanities, you're talking about everybody getting a computer. Half of India still cannot have enough food to eat. Half of Assam is still in detention camps because of NRCCAA. And you're still talking about graphic, dreamy projects under digital humanities. Who will give the fund? How will you work with digital humanities if you do not have enough kind of right funds? All those questions will keep coming in. Funding, licensing, copyrights, these are questions which will keep on coming in digital humanities. Tomorrow we will talk about it. Till then, any other questions? Biju Muni, you're very quiet this time. Last time you used to at least talk some bit in class. Anybody else? Nayan? Nayan, do you have any question for this?
Oh, ma'am.
You have understood everything?
Yes.
If you have not understood, please stop me in between and still ask me the questions, because after this gets over, it will be very difficult to clear things up. At least you can see Parthajit sir in class. You can't even see me in class. So whatever has to happen within the space of the online lecture. How many people are present? Only 14. 14 includes me and Parthajit sir. So 12 people only? No, 16. Or 15 is it? 15. So only 13 students? Why is the attendance so low this time? Last time it used to be huge. It used to be over 30. People have just not joined, or a lesser number is taking the unit 2 this time? Oh, this time first years are not doing it. And there used to be this another very interesting boy in class who used to ask questions. There was one class which he conducted because Neok sir was not there. What's the name? Devashish, na? Where is Devashish? Can't see him around. Devashish is in the final year, your batch.
Yes.
And maybe he's randomly just absent today. Maybe tomorrow he will come. Oh, so anyway, tell Devashish I was asking about him. Would love to see all of you in class. Okay, that then. Tomorrow we will again. Tomorrow's class is not from 10. Tomorrow's class is from 11, is it? Wait, let me just check my schedule again. Tomorrow's class, yeah, tomorrow's class is from 11. See you all then at 11 o'clock tomorrow to discuss about the major debates in digital humanities. And Parthajit sir, after I become free in my day-to-day works, I will text you and then I'll give you a call at some time.
Yeah. Okay, ma'am. No problem. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good day. See you all
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Okay, ma'am.